My name's Kos Sakas, International Artistic Director for Toning Guy, and we're here at Holborn Studios photographing our Creative Cut and Colour collection for 2012-13. Our collection is called Atelier, and Atelier means a workspace, a creative environment where a designer or a great artist will work with his team to create a collection of pieces that he will exhibit. The haircut I'm working on for the Atelier collection is called the Muse. Muse is the artist's subject on which he can create all the different looks. Well, there's two different variations of the Muse. The first one is what we worked on the step-by-step. But today, at the photo shoot, we worked it on a professional model. We actually worked a really big change as well. The length was down below the shoulder. She wore an Antonio Berardi outfit, and that goes with that British designer's theme which runs through the collective, and that's what makes the total concept and the total image of the collection. Antonio Berardi studies at Central St Martin's, as well as other British designers that we use within the collection, such as the great McQueen, Peter Pilotto, and all of these different designers all working together. So this bringing hair into the fashion industry and the fashion industry into hair, bringing them together as one. And Toни and Guy are official hair care sponsors for London Fashion Week, make it the perfect partnership. So today we're seeing the finished result at the photo shoot. So let's go back and have a look at the step-by-step that we cut on Isabella. We will start working with a radial parting, so from the crown to the top of the ear. Working a series of diamond sections internally, where the points will face the front, the top of the ears, and also the back. From here, we'll be working with a reverse graduation, so we can release the weight, but maintain the perimeter weight. Internally, we will repeat exactly the same process in order to create our disconnections. Okay, so we've completed our sectioning pattern, and you can see these two diagonal backs to create the point for our diamond. Now, working this section diagonally forward to help us to maintain the squareness into that line. So subsectioning off first of all, dropping the hair down to its natural fall. We're going to work through the fingers so we get an element of graduation, and then using a point cutted line so we can create this shattered and serrated shape. Okay, so we've worked the guideline onto the first side. You can see how this squareness here is really important, and we'll pick up exactly the same thing on the other side. It's important here, just keep the elbow drop down. Again, the elevation to a finger's depth and the distribution to its natural fall. Okay, so now we've established our baseline. We're going to drop down the next section, working the sections parallel to the last, continuing to drop to its natural fall and point cutting through. Okay, so now coming to the last section, just below the diamond, again continuing to work to its natural fall. It's really important now we come to the top of the ear that we don't start to over-direct the hair back, but we continue to follow the shape round. And that way we will keep a really nice square, even shape into the front area. I do not want it to increase or round off at this point. Again, with my point cutting, it's important that you do slightly overlap onto the previous section because that adds to that serrated edge. Body positioning here is really important. As you can see, I'm right in front of my section. Help me to avoid any type of over-direction back. So once completing the back area, we're working into the front, and the front area is key to the shape. Again, I'm going to continue my point cutting, but I want to maintain this squareness, and this is what's going to create this very contemporary feeling. As I drop down my next section, again keeping that to its natural fall, we can see over the ear we've got that protrusion. Turning now to the wide teeth of the comb and point cutting through. We are going to be repeating this process over onto the other side. So again, dropping down everything to its natural fall, release that tension over the top of the ear, and then continue that point cutted line into our guideline through the back. So just working the balance on the other side, re-point cutting through, again leaving that distance between the fingers and the cutting line, allowing you versatility when working that through. Okay, coming to the last section. So it's great to be able to create such a restyle, and it's the perfect canvas in which to work something creative and directional for our new Atelier collection. And also with this unmissable colour, we're creating something that's very, very strong. Okay, so now we've established our perimeter outline, it's time to release the weight. Now I want to release the weight on the internal part of the section, not through the perimeter. So I'm mimicking the diagonal back sections of this diamond, and then we're going to elevate out at 90 degrees. My fingers will stay parallel to the section, allowing me to release the weight internally, but to maintain the weight through the perimeter outline. From that section, we're going to work another section parallel to our last diagonally back, continuing to over direct to the first, and using this very deep, soft point cutting. And the final section, up to the first, maintaining an even elevation and an even over direction. We can re-point cut through our original guideline and create that softness. Let's drop that down and have a look what that's created. You can see these shorter lengths here, we shake it through, and that's just released that perfectly. Now to go over onto the other side, we'll repeat exactly the same thing. We'll take our profile parting now just off center. So now we have a guideline from the other side as well. Fingers parallel to that section, and we'll continue with that deep point cutting. Okay, so we've completed the release of texture just through the back area, working into the front. Again, we're mimicking the shape of the diamond, so working on a diagonal back. And what's important is that we don't cut this area. We're going to continue to elevate at 90 degrees, and again what we can do is see the guideline from behind. Just pushing my fingers out slightly, and then continuing to point cut through. Okay, so from there, just working the final section. Ideally, that length doesn't want to reach into that guideline, so what you're doing is just cleaning up what we already have. Again, working in, releasing that weight, and then let's drop that back down and have a look to see what we've created. We're going to repeat this technique onto the other side. Again, we've got the guideline from behind the radial, following that into the profile parting. Let's maintain an even elevation as we worked on the other side. Again, we've got the guideline from behind that we can see just into my knuckle, and then we'll continue to point cut that through. Work that into the fringe area at the moment. And then bring that final section up to the first. Okay, so now working on to the internal area, we're going to be using a very, very similar technique to what we've just used, but instead of creating a reverse block graduation, this will create a much softer internal layer. So we'll create another diamond here, elevate this back out to 90 degrees, and we'll point cut this length through. My sections again will be worked parallel. And the important thing is that I want my final length that I'm going to cut here to drop down onto that perimeter outline. And we can see that pretty much works there for us. Now coming into the last section, continuing to over direct. Do not overcompensate, otherwise you'll just maintain too much outline, which will have to be taken away. But this whole first quarter will act as a visual guide and an understanding of where we need to take this length. So from here, I'm going to drop everything down into the perimeter and see where that sits. So that's perfect there, exactly where I want it, allowing me to eliminate that excess length a little bit later on, but still maintain that release of texture. Okay, so taking my next diagonal back, again mimicking the diamond shaped section, we're using the last quarter as a guideline to length, elevating out at 90 degrees, as we can see here, we can see the guideline, and then we'll continue to point cut that away. And we will repeat and follow this sectioning pattern until the last section. Okay, so working through my next section into the front of the radial, and this is where it becomes really evident of what we're trying to do with this layering pattern. Because on each corner, so through the front, over the top of the ears, and through the central back, is where the lowest points are and where most weight is being maintained. So what we're doing is taking a guideline here from the back, as we can see, elevate that back through, and then repoint cut that away. Once we've eliminated that initial length, going back through that line, just to soften that out. My next section will be parallel. And our body positioning here is really important, that we don't start to over-direct the hair to the back or through to the sides, but it is into this far corner. And then we'll take the last section here. And it's with this last section that you can decide whether you want to drop the elevation a little bit lower so you can remove a little bit more length and weight, or whether you want to drag that back. Again, you're seeing that slight overlap, but that will be removed again to maintain that weight. Now what we're going to do is repeat exactly the same sectioning pattern over onto the other side, using again the guideline that we've got behind our radial. Okay, so the important thing now is to continue with this natural fall of distribution, using the YT for the comb, so we've got a really loose tension. We're going to go back through, working on a finger's depth, and then repoint cut that through. Ideally here, I'm actually leaving that just a little bit longer, because I know that when that dries, that's going to jump up, and then that will meet that line just perfectly. It's really important here that you don't flatten the angle of your scissors as you're point cutting through, so you can speed through that, but keeping that on a parallel into a slight diagonal, so you're losing the weight and in turn just crumbling away just that perimeter length. Okay, so we've just finished drying the hair off. Now it's time to work through the fringe. And it's the fringe which will add personality and individuality into the shape. So in this instance, we're taking it above the brow so we can make it strong and very fashion focused. So working with my horizontal section through, you can see that I'm working on the low and deep recession area. Starting from the center, again we're going to use the YT for the comb, and then we need to establish our length. Now unlike the point cutting which we work through the perimeter outline, this is slightly more serrated, so stronger, more detailed and more defining. But dropping here to its natural fall, again continuing to point cut through. Body positioning really important here, so it's in front of the section, allowing you to control that shape. As we come just into the recession area here, we can freehand that. Okay, so now we've established the length and the shape of our fringe, we can start dropping the rest of the sections down. Again, try to avoid from keeping these sections too thick. Drop them through so you can still see the outline of the guide, and that will give you a lot more control and a much stronger line as we point cut through. Okay, so coming to the very last section for the fringe. Every section I complete, I check visually before I move on. It's at this point, as we get to the top of the cheekbone area, where we can really have a final decision on how far back we take this line, and I'm just freehanding that through. That enables me there to create a really nice, strong perimeter shape. Okay, so the fringe was the final detail. This is the finished technique of the Muse, ready for Jane to colour. So we've just had Isabella back with her unmissable colour. Now it's time to finish and style the shape. First of all, we're going to work with the sleek blowout cream, and then we're also going to work in the gel, and that's what's going to toughen it up and create that synthetic finish. We'll just mix the two together and apply that from roots to end. Okay, so this is the finished cut and colour technique, and it's time now to personalise. What I'm going to do first of all is elevate the hair back out at 90. The area underneath, I just want to ever so slightly touch with some deep parallel point cutting. And internally, I don't want to go through the maximum length because that's what strengthens the outline. What I want to do is come here internally to working around the crown. I'm going to work a little bit more just through the other side. Again, just internally through the first disconnection, and then internally just through the crown. Just through the front area where the disconnection would be slightly more subtle, and you can see that there because obviously we haven't got the depth and the density of hair just through the front hairline. So just adjusting that accordingly. So there's two products I'm going to work with now that will finish the surface of the hair. It won't give it any hold, but it will give a beautiful reflection plus a dusty feel combined. So first of all, the Shine Mist. That will put an underlying sheen to the hair, and then we're going to be using the dry shampoo, which will just put a very dusty hue over to the finish. Okay, so this is the finished look to the Muse, working with this distressed texture internally created by these disconnections, and then the focal area using this short square fringe, where we've dropped over some of that texture, again creating that disconnection. The important thing here is to create the right texture, the right feeling, again taking a ready-to-wear shape and turning it into a couture piece. This is the Muse. With our creative cut and colour collection, it's not only about the creative aspect of it, but it's also about how we can inspire. Now, where I worked in a really strong square fringe, it doesn't have to be. It can be softer and more swept, and it could even be left just as a centre parting and kept very editorial and really super simple, but perfectly beautiful. The collection's really important because it allows us to be inspired, it allows us to motivate, it allows us to push boundaries and take the elements of hairdressing to the next level and to the forefront of what's happening within fashion. Tony and Guy have always shared their education, and that's what's made us the success it is today. When you come to visit at any one of our academies worldwide, Tony and Guy International Artistic Team will share all of these ideas with you, especially the techniques, how to get to those results. You know, and that's what one-on-one education is the most important thing. And this is the Muse for the Atelier collection.
Hi, my name is Pinar Nikati, International Art Director for Tony and Guy London and also for Label M. We're here today shooting our new Tony and Guy collection called Atelier. And today we're working on the look called the Verve, which is the longest haircut from the new collection. And it's a really nice fresh take on how long hair should be worn with the upcoming trends coming through next year. My interpretation of the look comes from the Balenciaga campaign, but bringing this a little bit more subtle so it becomes a lot more wearable, and bringing the texture through, but wearing more height through the top and keeping the shape more narrow and keeping away from glamour and making it more lived in. We've seen really nice variations of how this look can work. In the campaign, it's worked a lot more softer, a lot more wearable. The layers are a little bit longer, a little bit more movable, and there's a little bit more kind of softness still throughout. However, with the step-by-step, we've worked the shape a little bit stronger. Still being a long haircut, it is still wearable. So it's really adaptable for those clients who want long hair, but maybe you're just introducing them into layering, or someone who's already wearing layers, but they want to make it a little bit more stronger and a lot more up to date and contemporary. So now let's see how the technique of the verve is worked. The concept of the shape is really focusing on layering the hair. We're going to create the shape to be quite narrow, a focus on the fringe area, and then also concentrating on the 70s shapes, but in much more of a subtle way. So working with a little bit of a shape that's a bit shorter through the front and longer through the back. So first of all, to prepare the hair for cutting, we're going to use some protein spray. Sprays all the way through the hair, and this is just going to make sure the texture is even as we work through the whole haircut. Section off the hair with a profile parting, and then going into a radial parting. Work through with diagonal back sections to the profile. From the radial, we go into a diagonal forward section onto the recession, which then leaves us our disconnected panels through the sides, and then we have a triangular section through the front area for our focus on the fringe. Okay, so to begin the technique, we start on the corner of the nape, take diagonal back sections from our parting, elevate up at 90 degrees. Our first section is distributed parallel to the section, and we point cut from short to long. It's quite a visual shape, so working with the length of the hair that you're working with on your model, as we want to maintain quite a lot of the length, and the idea of this technique through the underneath is to achieve some transparency through the perimeter without making the hair too thin and maintaining the density to the look. Using the same technique on the opposite side, changing our body position so we're standing on the corner of our model's body position, so just behind the shoulder. So this is going to enable us to get the correct shape through the perimeter. So we're next going to now go on to the fringe area, as it's going to be a focal point of the haircut. So once we place the shaping through the front, it will give us a nice visual idea of where to kind of place the layering within the shape to create that narrowness. So we start by taking a profile section within the triangle section for the fringe. Now we're going to create the fringe with a layering technique. So we don't want the fringe to sit completely flat. We want that little bit of kind of fluffiness to it, so we can enable some height when it comes to dressing out the hair. So we're going to work the shape of a round layer through the front area, worked at 90 degrees. We're going to utilise our deep point cutting technique. Now it's quite important here that we keep our blades parallel, so we create a softer edge. Take parallel sections to your profile section and then over direct onto your first section. When you're over directing, making sure your body position is on the opposite side so your distribution becomes even. And then that last section, using the same technique through the opposite side, maintaining parallel sections to the profile and over directing to the opposite side and moving my body position to the opposite side. And with my point cutting, once I've eliminated the length, it's quite nice to just comb back through the hair and work a little bit more deeper with your point cutting, so not shaping the hair or taking away the length, just so you can release a little bit more texture and achieve a bit more separation through the ends. So when it comes to finishing the shape, it's a little bit more softer and you can achieve that raw feeling. So we're coming on to our internal layering through the back area. We take a profile section, elevate up at 90 degrees, working on a round layer shape, however just slightly overextending that underneath area, so it creates a little bit of an overhang and it creates more of a seamless effect on the perimeter. Point cutting And again, utilising a softer form of point cutting so it creates a softer edge. So just going back into our section to break up the ends a little bit. So repeating the same technique through the opposite side. So the reason we're creating an over direction through our internal shape is to almost contradict the shape through the underneath, so we maintain that density through the perimeter. As through the underneath it was worked from short to long, and now through the top area we're working from short to long in the opposite direction. So then that's also how we create the transparency within the texture. So overlapping the shorter areas with longer lengths with our next section. So now I've completed one part of the internal shape. I can now check the hair visually and see how the shape is developing. So now we're going to work on our final section, which is the internal shape through the top area. So taking a profile section for our top panel, elevating up at 90 degrees and working from short to long. Creating our guide by looking at the hair visually and seeing where that's going to sit through the side area once we place that over direction in, and also how that sits with the fringe area. So you could adapt this section for suitability, or if you wanted to make it stronger, and also if you wanted to make it softer as well. But if you wanted to make it stronger, you could take that parting away and take your layers shorter. So the technique of the verb is completed. So you can see how the shape has developed the texture. I've been working through and putting in that shape to create that narrowness through the side area and that little bit of fluffiness and transparency through the top area. And now we're just going to be drying off the hair in preparation for Michaela to do the colour. So we now have our model back from Michaela's colour, so now we're going to work on the finishing and some personalising. So to start off with, we're going to apply some blowout spray all the way through the hair from roots to ends, just to start up to build the texture. And then what we're going to be doing is personalising the look and then applying some more product, some sea salt spray, to then develop the texture and create that dryness and that separated feeling throughout. We finished power drying the hair off to enable us to start personalising the hair and go through and detailing the look. So we're going to start with the internal shape, so just dividing the hair into a radial pattern. So here we can see the disconnection within our technique. So we want to create a visual blend with our personalising techniques. So staying quite close to the end, but obviously going deeper with the slicing, but making sure you don't go too far into the mid-length area where you'll make the hair weak and make it too wispy. And then checking your personalising visually as you work through to judge whether you need to personalise a little bit more and see how it connects in with the rest of the haircut. So the shape that we're looking for is that nice seamless feel with the connection of the layers and the perimeter. So we don't actually see an actual difference within the shape, but the texture's easy to develop. So what we're seeing here is how the connection with the layers and the perimeter with the slicing technique just gives us that transparency throughout the look. So our next section, I'm going to move on to the fringe area. The fringe being a focal point is where we want to see the main detail of the look. I'm going to take a profile section through the front, go back through the same elevation and the same shape and just slice through. The fringe area, depending on what hair texture you're working with, you might find more suitable to work with deep point cutting through the ends of the hair, as you don't want to go too close to the root and you just want to create that detail and separation through the ends of the hair. So through this top area, we need to pay attention to how the hair is sitting through the side area. So rather than achieving width and volume, we want to actually keep the shape narrow, but without making the shape too high at the same time. So again, to prevent creating too much height, stay close to the end with your texturizing and just really subtle with the texturizing through the top area. Being aware how far you're going down into the perimeter, and also slicing from the underneath will help to achieve more of a seamless feel, and also a little bit more shape through the front area. So now that we're finished with the personalising, I'm going to work in more C-sort through the mid-lengths and ends to achieve that matte feeling to the hair. Okay, so after drying in the C-sort, we're going to now apply some miracle fibre, and this is just going to detail that texture through the end and then through the roots area, just massaging really lightly so we get that stringy texture coming through the front, and just encouraging the hair to sit forward rather than away from the face. So we're also progressing the way hair is being finished and long hair is being worn. So here we have the technique of the Verb brand new collection, Atelier. This look is fantastic for my model, and Farah is stunning. She's got a great image about her. So with the new look for the campaign on the Verb, it's not just about long hair, it's about creating the image on how long hair should be worn, and the fact that she's really blonde just brings that across beautifully. The technique can definitely be used on different textures of hair, curly, wavy, fine, using different products to achieve the look that suits that particular hair texture. And it can be worn with a little bit more movement, not so dishevelled. It can also be blow dried quite straight if you want something a little bit more controlled. I was really excited about doing the long haircut because I've seen lots of progression within long hair this year. It was really nice to be able to translate that into our collection. Once we saw the hair and the makeup all together, it just looked fantastic and really translated and kept in concept with what we're doing on the street within Toni and Guy, and also what Toni and Guy do at Fashion Week. So this is the cutting technique of the Verb for the Atelier collection.
Hi, my name is Richard Manor, International Artistic Director for Toni and Guy London and Label M. We're here at Holborn Studios shooting our brand new collection, Atelier. The look that I've worked on is called the Brody. It's a shorter graduated haircut. We wanted to move away from the strong undercutting and reconnect a lot of the hair. So through the back, the graduation was kind of over-directed to show bits of weight, working with a bit of an A-line through the back. The front is a lot softer. Working with Jason's colour has given us a lot more versatility. The inspiration originally came when I saw the fashion show of John Galliano, Autumn-Winter 2012. A lot of his pieces within the collection were symmetric externally, but there were a lot of layers internally that gave it kind of a bit more interest. So I thought it would be good to adopt that idea and work something quite symmetric, but internally asymmetric. So let's have a look at the technique of the Brody. With the Brody, it's going to be a graduated shape. We want to move away from the undercutting. So we're going to work a lot more shorter through this back section, connecting all the way through to the crown, and then working a high elevated graduation through the sides. The top area is going to be left that little bit longer to give it the sense of versatility. Okay, so with the technique, we're starting off with a central profile parting and then working a graduation through the back by taking 2 C-curved sections, quite steep to behind the ear. With the top section, we're also taking another 2 C-curved sections, slightly offset, so you've got the form of asymmetry, through this front area to enable us to work with a slight disconnection through the top area. So I'm going to start with putting my sectioning pattern through. We're going to start with the Label M protein spray, as this is a fantastic cutting agent to enable me to maintain moisture, but also to feed the hair with protein. Okay, so we've got the sectioning pattern in there. You can see the 2 C-curved sections. We're going to start off with the graduation on the left side, about 1 inch away from the hairline, and picking the hair up to begin the graduation. We want this haircut to be quite groomed in its finish, so the way we're going to be cutting it is working blunt cutting. So what we're going to do now is then begin to over-direct this corner up to maintain more length with the corner. So everything's directed up to that same point of graduation. Fingers are parallel to the initial stationary guideline and working